A chill wind swept through the shelter's rusty fences, blending the sting of disinfectant with distant barks. A solitary figure approached, hands trembling as he faced the final cage, where a once fearless war dog now lay still, its gaze alien, as if erasing their shared past. What happened between them, and what will the truth cost? Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. Thank you. No more waiting, the story begins right now. As the sun dipped below the Arizona peaks, casting a canvas of orange and violet across the sky, Jack Reynolds, a 37-year-old ex-soldier, trudged toward the local animal shelter. Each thud of his weathered boots on the concrete echoed the burden of every stride he'd taken in life. Since departing the military 2 years prior, he'd been searching for something to ease the hollowness within. Yet no occupation or counseling could mend the deep void left behind. Rex, his steadfast German shepherd, the war canine who'd stood by him through perilous operations, had been sidelined by an injury, forced into retirement. The shelter was modest and unassuming, enclosed by rusted wire and dotted with makeshift kennels. The sharp scent of sanitizer lingered, blending with the sporadic chorus of barks. Jack had come at the urging of his elder sister Emily, who thought a dog might soothe the lingering scars of his post-war struggles. He'd wavered, but an inner pull compelled him forward. Strolling down the tight rows, he scrutinized each enclosure with a discerning gaze. Some dogs yapped eagerly, tails whipping in a bid for notice. Others stared quietly, their eyes steeped in sorrow. None, though, carried the unique fire he linked to Rex. Just as he neared surrender, a worker's voice broke through. "Mr. Reynolds, there's a German shepherd out back you might want to see. He arrived a few weeks ago. He's a bit unusual." Jack's head snapped up, caught off guard. "A German shepherd?" Without a reply, he trailed the young woman to a quieter section. In a cage tucked in the dimmest corner lay a sizable dog, his black and tan coat framing a rigid stance, his gaze heavy with fatigue. Still, Jack's pulse quickened. He'd know that dog in an instant. "Rex?" he breathed, voice faint. The German shepherd lifted his head slowly, locking eyes with Jack, but no warmth flickered there. No tail swayed, no step drew near, just a vacant stare, as if Jack were a stranger passing by. He doesn't know me," Jack muttered, retreating a step. A pang gripped his chest like a fracture splitting inside. Yet as he held Rex's gaze a moment longer, one truth crystallized. He wouldn't abandon this chance to reconnect. Jack and Rex's heartfelt tale was only starting. Curious about what's next? Hit that like button to cheer on their path and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this tale of resilience and companionship. Jack lingered before the cage, eyes fixed. Rex, the German shepherd who'd once radiated vigor and resolve, now seemed a mere echo of his former self. Those lively eyes had dulled to a shadowy distance. Scars marred his hind leg and ear, stark reminders of combat. But beneath them lay something deeper, an unseen scar, one Jack understood all too well, mirroring his own silent ache. "He's endured a lot," the worker said softly. "Picked up from a smaller shelter in another state. Seems someone gave him up when they couldn't manage him anymore. He suffers from anxiety and doesn't trust humans easily." She paused, looking at Kane hesitantly. "Do you know him?" Kane nodded slowly, his voice coming out in a barely audible whisper. "He was my partner, my best friend. For a moment, he got lost in a wave of memories. The grueling training where they both learned to trust each other. The risky missions where Rex had saved his life more than once. And the nights when the dog was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. And now there he was in front of Rex, and the dog had no idea who he was." The staff member carefully opened the cage. Rex watched but made no move. Kane slowly knelt down, extending his hand. "Hey, buddy, it's me, Kane." His voice trembled, but he kept it soft. Rex tilted his head slightly, as if trying to understand, but remained still, muscles tense. Kane felt a lump in his throat. He knew this wouldn't be an easy process. "Would you like to spend some time with him?" "We can take him to the play yard," the staff member suggested, trying to ease the tension in the air. Kane nodded without hesitation. In the yard, the scene wasn't much different. Rex kept his distance, sniffing the air but avoiding any direct interaction. Kane watched every movement, trying to understand what the dog was feeling. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Kane made a decision. He looked at the staff member and said firmly, "I'm taking him home, no matter how long it takes. I'll bring him back." There was determination in his voice, an echo of the loyalty they had shared in the past. He knew that just like Rex, he too needed rescuing, and maybe this was the beginning for both of them. The drive to Kane's house was marked by an unsettling silence. Rex lay in the back of the truck, resting on a blanket Kane had laid out for him. The German Shepherd kept his eyes fixed on the window, avoiding any eye contact. Kane glanced at the rearview mirror from time to time, trying to decipher what was going on in the dog's mind. It was hard not to feel rejected, but he also knew that, as veterans, they both carried burdens that made them difficult to reach. When they arrived home, Kane parked at the entrance of his small property on the outskirts of town. The house was simple, surrounded by a large yard with a few trees gently swaying in the wind. He opened the truck door and called to Rex, but the dog hesitated. After a few seconds, he stepped down slowly, taking cautious steps. Every movement was meticulous, as if constantly assessing the surroundings. Kane led Rex to the front door, opening it carefully. "Welcome to your new home, boy," he said, trying to sound cheerful, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Rex entered but stood still in the entryway, sniffing the air cautiously. He seemed suspicious, as if expecting something unexpected to happen at any moment. Determined to create a comfortable space, Kane had set up an area in the corner of the living room with a new dog bed, food and water bowls, and a few toys he'd bought on the way home. "This is your spot, Rex," he said, pointing to the corner, but the German Shepherd stayed where he was, ignoring the invitation. Kane sighed, feeling the frustration begin to weigh on him. As Kane was preparing something to eat, he couldn't help but remember the days when Rex would run to him, full of energy and loyalty. That dog was different now, wounded in a way Kane understood all too well. He looked at Rex, who was still standing in the same spot, staring off into the distance. "I know how you feel, buddy. I feel the same way." "Lost," he murmured, more to himself than to the dog. That night, Kane left the bedroom door open, hoping Rex would feel safe enough to come closer. But when he turned off the lights, he heard the soft sound of paws on the floor. Rex didn't come to him but lay down near the bedroom door, keeping a safe distance. Kane smiled to himself in the dark. It was a small step, but to him it was the beginning of something bigger. The next morning, Kane woke up to the soft sound of footsteps coming from the hallway. Rex was sitting near the door, ears perked, silently watching him. For a moment, Kane felt a spark of hope. Maybe something familiar was coming back to the dog's mind. "Good morning, Rex," Kane said, stretching and forcing a smile. But the German Shepherd only looked away and slowly walked back to the corner of the room. Determined to rebuild their connection, Kane spent much of the day trying to interact with Rex. He grabbed a tennis ball and threw it to him, but the dog didn't react. He placed a bowl of fresh food beside him, but Rex only approached it after Kane left the room. Each attempt at closeness was met with cold silence. Kane felt the weight of rejection, but he also understood it was more than that. It was fear, distrust, maybe even pain. That afternoon, Kane decided to try something different. He grabbed a worn military vest he had kept in an old box in the closet. It was the same vest he wore during missions with Rex. As he put it on, the familiar smell of sand, sweat, and the battlefield hit him. "Let's see if you remember this, boy," he said, taking the vest to the backyard where Rex was. Rex looked at the vest with curiosity, tilting his head slightly. For a moment, Kane thought he had managed to stir some memory. He threw the vest on the ground and stepped back, giving Rex space to approach. The German Shepherd sniffed the fabric, his nostrils flaring as he analyzed the scent. For a brief moment, his eyes seemed to lose their emptiness, but then he pulled back, retreating with his tail low. Kane sighed, feeling the hope fade away once again. Sitting on the porch that night, Kane watched Rex lying in the backyard, his eyes fixed on the stars. "I'm not giving up on you," Kane said aloud, as if speaking to the wind. "You didn't give up on me when I needed you most, and I'm not giving up now." He knew he was asking a lot, but he also knew that the bond between them was still there, even if buried beneath layers of trauma. As the air grew colder, Kane decided to give Rex the space he needed. He went inside, leaving the back door open, and went to bed. Hours later, the sound of paws scratching the floor woke him. Looking at the foot of the bed, he saw Rex lying there, his eyes half closed. Kane didn't say anything, just smiled in the dark. The distance between them was shrinking. It was still small, but enough to reignite his determination. In the following days, small moments began to appear, like cracks in the wall of distrust that separated Kane and Rex. On Monday morning, as Kane was chopping wood in the yard, he noticed Rex watching him from a distance, head tilted. The German Shepherd kept his tail down, but there was a subtle curiosity in his eyes. Kane paused for a moment, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and reached out to Rex. "Want to help, boy?" he asked in a playful tone. Rex didn't approach, but he didn't look away either. Later that same day, during a walk around the yard, Kane picked up a stick and tossed it lightly forward, not expecting much. To his surprise, Rex took a few steps toward the object, stopped, and then returned to where he had been. Kane smiled. "Ah, so you remember how to play. You're just pretending you don't." Despite Rex's shy response, that moment felt like progress. On Tuesday, Kane decided to take him for a walk. Rex's old ID tag was still stored away, so Kane cleaned it and attached it to the new collar. "Let's go for a walk," he said, adjusting the leash. Rex hesitated when Kane opened the gate, looking outside as if the world beyond the fence was hostile. Still, with a gentle tug, Kane managed to convince him to walk. During the walk, Rex seemed tense, always alert. He was constantly sniffing the air and kept his body stiff, as though expecting imminent danger. Kane noticed this and spoke calmly. "You don't need to be like that, boy. We're safe here." He knew those words didn't mean much to Rex, but he hoped that, over time, the calm tone would start to make a difference. As they were heading home, something unexpected happened. Kane was taking off Rex's leash when the dog approached and sniffed his hand. Kane stood still, feeling his heart race. "That's it, Rex," he murmured, trying not to show too much emotion. He didn't move as Rex kept exploring his scent for a few seconds before pulling away again. For Kane, that small gesture felt like a sign that something inside Rex was starting to change. That evening, while Kane was preparing dinner, Rex lay on the rug near the kitchen. It wasn't exactly an invitation for affection, but the closeness was enough for Kane to feel that they were on the right path. He looked at Rex and whispered, "I think we're becoming friends again." "Huh?" Rex didn't respond, but his eyes seemed less distant, as if a part of him was finally recognizing the man who had once meant everything to him. Have you ever had a moment where you felt a special connection with an animal, even after tough times? Share in the comments. We love hearing your inspiring stories. It was a gray morning, and the mist covered the yard like a veil. Kane woke up early, as he always did, but found Rex already awake, sitting by the living room window. The German Shepherd was staring out, as if lost in thought. Kane approached carefully, sensing that every interaction with the dog was a test of patience. "Remembering something, boy?" he asked softly, though he knew he wouldn't get an answer. After breakfast, Kane decided to bring something special for the day. From the back of the closet, he pulled out an old wooden box filled with items he'd kept since his military discharge. Among the medals, photos, and letters was a worn-out toy, a rubber ball that Rex loved during his breaks in the field. Kane held it for a moment, feeling the weight of the memories. Then he went to the yard where Rex was and threw the ball to the ground near the dog. Rex looked at the ball, his body immediately tensing. He sniffed the air, as if the object carried a familiar scent, something buried in his memories. For a few seconds, it seemed like he was going to ignore it, but then he stepped forward. He sniffed the ball, hesitant, before stepping back again. Kane watched in silence, noticing Rex's internal struggle. "You remember this, don't you?" he asked, almost pleading. That day, something felt different. During lunch, Rex stayed closer to Kane, following his every move. For the first time, he accepted food directly from his hand. Kane could hardly believe what he was seeing, but he kept his emotions in check, moving slowly and carefully. The German Shepherd ate slowly, keeping his eyes locked on Kane, as if he was beginning to trust him again. Later, Kane sat on the porch with the ball in his hand, spinning it between his fingers. "Remember when you brought me this thing in the middle of the night because you couldn't sleep?" He chuckled softly, remembering how Rex used to insist on playing, even in moments of tension. "You were so stubborn. Still are, I guess." Kane tossed the ball gently across the yard, not expecting Rex to react. To his surprise, the dog perked up his ears and followed the ball with his eyes, though he didn't catch it. That night, as Rex lay near Kane's bed, the veteran felt the distance between them continuing to shrink. It wasn't just the physical closeness. Something deeper was happening. They were still both trapped in their own pain, but now they were starting to share a piece of the burden. Before turning off the lights, Kane looked at Rex and said, "We're almost there, partner. We're almost there." The sun shone brightly that morning, spreading light across the backyard as Kane prepared for another day with Rex. He decided to try something new, recreating one of the old training routines they used to do on the battlefield. With a whistle hanging around his neck and a rope in hand, Kane hoped the exercise might spark something in Rex's memory, something buried beneath the trauma and time. "Let's take it slow, boy," Kane said as he walked to the center of the yard. Rex followed at a safe distance, his eyes focused on every movement. Kane whistled and gave a simple command. "Sit." For a moment, Rex stayed still, but to Kane's surprise, he slowly lowered his body and sat. "Good boy," Kane exclaimed, a mix of surprise and enthusiasm in his voice. Kane then picked up the rubber ball and threw it a little farther. "Fetch, Rex," he called, trying to recreate the energy of the past. Rex hesitated, eyeing the ball as if assessing his options. Kane stood still, waiting patiently. After a few seconds, Rex took a few steps toward the ball, stopped, looked at Kane, and finally picked it up with his mouth. A chill ran down Kane's spine. "You did it, boy." As Rex walked back with the ball, something unexpected happened. He dropped the object at Kane's feet and looked up at him, staring in a way Kane hadn't seen in years. There was something there, a spark of recognition, as if the German Shepherd was remembering who Kane was to him. The veteran felt his eyes welling up, but he kept his composure. He didn't want to scare Rex with his emotion, but he maintained his composure. He didn't want to scare Rex with his emotions. That moment marked a turning point. For the rest of the day, Rex seemed closer, following Kane around the house, and even allowing small gestures of affection. When Kane sat on the couch, Rex would lie on the floor next to him, something he had never done before. It wasn't just the training or the familiar objects. It was as if, little by little, Rex was letting his guard down and allowing Kane back in. That night, while Kane was organizing his belongings, he found an old photo of him and Rex in the field, taken on the day they completed a difficult mission. In the picture, both of them were exhausted, but there was a gleam of pride in their eyes. Kane placed the photo on the table next to the bed and showed it to Rex. "Look at this, boy. We made one heck of a team, didn't we?" Rex looked at the photo for a few seconds before lying down next to Kane, closer than he had ever been since coming to that house. The sound of distant thunder sliced through the gray sky as rain began to fall over Kane's backyard. He looked outside, watching Rex stand near the porch, his nose pointed toward the horizon. It was as if the dog were in a trance, hypnotized by the dance of lightning and the drumming of the rain. Kane, holding a coffee mug, approached slowly. "You've always loved storms, remember?" he murmured, more to himself. Rex turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting Kane's. For the first time in weeks, there was something different in that gaze. It wasn't the complete barrier of distrust that had once separated them. It was hesitation, yes, but also a glimmer of curiosity. A small sign that something inside Rex was changing. Kane's heart quickened. He knew there was still a long way to go, but moments like this gave him the strength to keep going. Deciding to seize the moment, Kane walked over to the cabinet and grabbed the old military whistle he had kept along with other items from his service. He knew it was a risk, but maybe the familiar sound could trigger some kind of reaction from Rex. Heading back to the porch, Kane gave 2 short blows on the whistle, the same pattern he used during missions to call Rex back to his side. The German Shepherd turned sharply, his ears standing up in alert. For a moment, Kane almost believed Rex would run to him like he used to, but instead, Rex only took a timid step toward Kane before stopping again. The spark in his eyes faded, replaced by a shadow of doubt. He lowered his head as if fighting something inside himself. Kane sighed deeply, putting away the whistle. He didn't want to force Rex to relive memories that might still be too painful. "It's okay, partner," he said in a reassuring tone. "We'll go at your pace." Later, as the rain picked up, Kane prepared a dry blanket and a bowl of fresh water for Rex. He placed the items in the corner of the room, but this time chose not to push. He sat on the floor near the dog, but without trying to get too close. Just being there, present, was his way of showing Rex that he wasn't alone. Gradually, Rex began to relax, lying down on the rug and casting furtive glances in Kane's direction. As night fell, Rex did something that surprised Kane. He slowly approached, his heavy breathing echoing in the silence of the room. He stopped just a few inches away from Kane, who stayed still, respecting the dog's space. Rex sniffed the air around the veteran, as if gathering the courage to do something that, to him, was monumental. Then hesitantly, he gently touched Kane's hand with his nose. The touch lasted only a moment, but it was enough to make Kane's heart race. "You're coming back to me." "Boy," Kane whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't try to pet Rex, knowing that any sudden movement could break the fragile moment. He just stood there, letting the dog set the pace. When Rex finally stepped back, Kane felt a surge of comfort and optimism wash over him. It was a modest triumph, but to him it held the significance of a hard-won recovery. That night, with the storm howling beyond the walls, Kane noticed Rex settled at the foot of his bed. The dog wasn't fully at ease, but the distance in his demeanor had softened. For Kane, that was enough, a quiet promise that beneath layers of hurt and turmoil, their connection lingered, ready to be pieced back together. Dawn broke with a brilliant sheen, bathing the yard in warm gold. Kane stood on the porch, coffee mug in hand, observing Rex as he padded across the damp grass. Something felt distinct that morning. Rex moved with less rigidity, and in fleeting glimpses, he resembled not just a wounded creature, but the companion Kane once knew. Resolute to press forward, Kane grasped the old whistle again, weighing it in his palm. It was a gamble, but one he couldn't resist. With 2 quick blasts, the same signal from the night before, Kane watched as Rex's head jerked up instantly. Ears pricked, his frame tensed with awareness. Kane kept steady, masking any urgency or high hopes. "Come on, boy," he coaxed gently. To his astonishment, Rex edged closer, eyes locked on the whistle. A tightness gripped Kane's throat as the German shepherd advanced with newfound assurance. Rex paused before him, nostrils flaring as if chasing a trace of the past. Kane, moving deliberately, retrieved the rubber ball from earlier. He dangled it briefly in front of Rex, then lobbed it softly aside. For a heartbeat, the dog froze, but then his posture shifted. In a sudden flare of vigor, Rex darted after it, retrieving it and dropping it at Kane's feet. Kane stood motionless, tears welling in his eyes. That simple gesture, so minor yet profound, proved Rex was clawing past his walls. "There you are, partner," Kane rasped, voice thick with emotion. He tossed the ball again, and this time Rex bolted quicker, tail flicking faintly as he returned. The breakthrough felt almost enchanted, as if weeks of endurance had borne fruit. To Kane, each of Rex's steps marked a defiance of the scars they both bore. That evening, for the first time since Rex's arrival, he curled up beside Kane on the couch, head resting near his leg. Kane stayed silent and still, letting the quiet tell its own story. It was a spark of reunion, a fragile trust taking root, and as he lightly ran his fingers over Rex's head, Kane knew he'd never abandoned the friend who'd once pulled him through the abyss. Morning arrived with birdsong drifting through the yard, but inside something weightier unfolded. Rex stood at the room's center, eyes fixed on Kane, who clutched a leash in one hand and a military vest in the other. "Today's the day, buddy," Kane said, a hopeful grin breaking through. He'd chosen to take Rex to a cherished spot, a nearby park, their old haunt from training days off. It was a final measure, a chance to gauge their progress. En route, Rex seemed calmer than ever. Perched in the truck's back seat, he tilted his head out the cracked window, the breeze ruffling his fur. Kane glanced at him in the rearview mirror, a swell of pride and ease rising within. For weeks, he'd battled to reclaim the dog who'd meant everything, and now this felt like a turning point. "Like the good old days, huh?" Kane mused, expecting no reply. At the park, he unclipped Rex's leash and picked up the rubber ball once more. The German Shepherd paused, scanning the area. But this time, he didn't falter, charging after the ball the moment Kane threw it. They played for hours as if time and pain had never touched them. Kane sensed Rex edging closer to the dog he'd been, though he knew they'd both been reshaped forever. They weren't who they once were, but that didn't bar them from forging something fresh. As dusk fell, Kane sank onto a park bench, Rex stretching out beside him, head nestled on his lap. Gazing at the skyline, Kane exhaled, peace flooding his core. "I said I wouldn't quit, Rex," he murmured, fingers grazing the dog's fur. For the first time in years, Kane felt a fragment of himself mended. Rex wasn't merely a pet. He embodied all they'd endured and conquered. Driving home that night, Kane understood that whatever lay ahead, they'd face it together. Rex, with his bravery and devotion, had carved a path back to Kane's soul, teaching him that love, persistence, and time could mend even the rawest wounds. As the last hues of sunset faded from the sky, the story of Kane and Rex became more than just a reunion between a man and his dog. It became a powerful testament to the resilience of love, patience, and loyalty in the face of deep wounds. From that hollow stare in a cold metal cage to the gentle wag of a tail in the park, they walked through the shadows of their past together, rediscovering a bond that war had once stolen away. I can't help but feel my heart swell thinking about those quiet, monumental moments. The hesitant nudge of a nose, the first chase after a ball, or simply the silent companionship of two broken souls finding their way back. It's a reminder that no matter how harsh life gets, there's always a chance to mend, to heal, and to start anew. But this story isn't just about Kane and Rex, it's a mirror for all of us. It asks us to reflect on the connections in our own lives, whether with a friend, a family member, or a pet who once meant the world to us. Have you ever felt that unspoken bond? And if so, what have you done to hold on to it? I hope this tale has stirred something in you, just as it brought tears to my eyes while crafting these words. If it's touched your heart, please drop a like to support Kane and Rex's journey and hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Every subscription fuels us to bring you more heartfelt stories, more moments that matter, and more chances to explore the beauty of life together. Stick with us because stories like this deserve to live on forever.